In this video, we will be talking about matrix addition, subtraction, and scalar multiplication. First, I'd like to talk about the dimensions of a matrix. If I have a matrix that has 2 rows and 3 columns, then I would say that this matrix is a 2 by 3 matrix. Okay. Now, each number inside the matrix is called an element. So, for example, the element in the first row, so the first row and the second column would be 4. Okay. Now we can only add and subtract matrices. Matrices is plural for matrix. We can only add and subtract matrices if they have the same dimensions. So let's look at these examples here and notice that they have the same dimensions. So it makes it possible for me to do this. Now, when I am adding or subtracting, what I do is I add the elements that are in the same position, right? The same elements to each other, so the corresponding elements. So for example, I would add the 0 here to the 2 here. So I'd have the 0 plus 2 would be in that element spot. So the next one would be 4 plus 1. And up here I'd have negative 1 plus 3. And down here in my second row, I would have negative 3 plus negative 2, 2 plus negative 6, and then 5 plus 4. So hopefully you noticed what I just did and how I pulled each corresponding element and added them together, right? The ones that are in the same locations in each matrix. So now I just add them together. So this would equal, so 0 plus 2 is 2, 4 plus 1 is 5, negative 1 plus 3 is 2, negative 3 plus negative 2 is negative 5, 2 plus negative 6 is negative 4, and 5 plus 4 is 9. And that would be my final answer. Now, if I'm subtracting, I do the exact same thing, where I would subtract the corresponding elements. So for example, this first one that I would write would be negative 10 minus the 9, right? So I have negative 10 minus 9. This next one would be 2 minus a negative 2. The next one would be negative 4 minus 4. And then 7 minus 8. And then I have 7 minus a negative 5. And then negative 13, subtract a negative 11. All right, so that's my work shown. Now all I have to do is solve it to get my final answer. So up here in the top left, I would have negative 10 minus 9, which is negative 19. Top right, I have 2 minus a negative 2, which is 4. Now my middle row, I have negative 4 minus 4, which is negative 8. And then 7 minus 8, which is negative 1. And then for my bottom row, I have the 7 minus a negative 5, which is 12. And then negative 13, oops, I forgot my parentheses there. Negative 13 minus a negative 11, which is negative 2. And I've just subtracted those two matrices. Now, if I want to do scalar multiplication, what I would do is I would just look at this example. I'm doing 6 times this matrix. I would just multiply the 6 to each element of that matrix. So for example, this becomes 6 times a negative 7. And the top left element, the top right would be 6 times negative 1/3. Bottom left is 6 times 1/2. And then bottom right is 6 times 11, which then I can just solve. And 6 times negative 7 is going to be negative 42. 6 times a negative 1/3 is negative 2. 6 times 1/2, or 1/2 of 6 is 3. And 6 times 11 is 66. And I am done with the scalar multiplication of that matrix.